Hello everyone, this is Zoltar, and welcome to another Offworld Trading Company multiplayer game. Now this is going to be kind of similar to the other videos I've done, however there are going to be a few unfortunate differences, the primary one being I do not have any game sound available. I wasn't really expecting to be doing a whole lot of recording when this game popped up, but I decided to go ahead and hit the button, see what happened, but I wasn't completely set up yet. It ended up being a good game, so I wanted to share it with people. I wanted to share what I was able to do in this game, kind of show what I think of a strategy that I've generally spoken out against before, and see how I could actually use it in order to try and win a game, and see how it should be used if it's going to be used at all. So, no sound on this video. We did start a little ways into the exploration of the map, but not too far, so hopefully everybody's kind of gotten an idea of what the map looks like at this point. We can kind of see I waited very, very long to go ahead and throw down in this game, but I did go into this game kind of with the strategy in mind, and what you're going to see me do this game is you're going to see me attempt to power baron a bit and then transition from that into the later stages of the game. Now, I go ahead and I grab up a decent spot, not a great spot for scavenger, but an okay one, because I really wanted to be scavenger for this strategy because in my opinion, it relies very heavily on effective black market usage in the beginning of the game. And the only way to do that fast enough is to be a scavenger, so you can grab up all that black market stuff at the exact right time. We see an auction coming down here. Not a big deal. I think I commit to it a little bit. I don't think I actually ended up with this one. But it is a very, very nice opportunity to go ahead and get our bearings and get set up for the rest of the game. Fantastic use for auctions. It's just thinking time. Now, hopefully it doesn't take too long. I think it stops at 16K. No, okay, it kept going higher. So yeah, this is why I backed out of it, because I was like, no, if the whole point of my strategy, if I'm planning on power baroning, I can't afford a lot of debt in the early game, right? It's one of the downsides of the strategy. If I need to make money off of power, I can't have a lot of debt. So that was very much in the forefront of my mind. Despite this, I did sell off a large amount of life support early. But you'll notice I did keep my supply of water, partially because water was very cheap, and partially because at least that's one source of debt I'm not having to be punished by. And this is simply because I thought that life support would be able to propel me into the game better than avoiding the debt would allow me to gain money later more easily. I hope that made sense. I'm honestly not sure. I hope you guys at least caught on. Now, as you can see, I'm already starting to look at the possibility of throwing down power, and that's very early for me. That's a very good indication that I was planning on this strategy fairly early on. Unfortunately, I actually upgrade a little bit quickly here because I think I upgrade as soon as the aluminum comes in, rather than upgrading as soon as I had the aluminum to upgrade and throw down a wind turbine, which would have been the better option, but I'm impatient. It's my primary weakness in this game. Thankfully, it doesn't take too long. And this is all despite an aluminum shortage that came in, possibly with the help of the aluminum shortage. I get to take some small advantage off of it, but it does kind of delay me a little bit because suddenly I'm having to commit to it. Now, as you can see, this is an 8-player game, and before we really get into the strategy, let's talk about why I selected it for this game. First of all, the 8-player part's actually crucial because I'm expecting a lot more buildings to get thrown down relative to the amount of power, right? Like one person throwing down power and throwing down a fairly sufficient, a good amount of power, let's say, can provide enough power where it'll keep a couple people out of it in like a 4-player game. But in an 8-player game, there's going to be a lot more power being used overall, so there's a lot more room in that power market for the most part, and people might be a little more sluggish getting into it. You can also see I bought up a large amount of electronics early. And this is because I did want to put down a hacker array, which takes those 40 electronics, a huge, huge resource commitment. But thankfully, power's done exactly what I expected. It is firing up in price insanely fast, which is exactly what we were hoping it would do with the large game. It is good I secured a source of aluminum that I think actually ends up getting mutinied at some point this game, just because aluminum was so excessively valuable. The carbon, not so much, but it was also important I secure all that carbon. Nanotech, one of the few patents I would actually go for right now, despite needing to minimize my debt, because I consider nanotech to be exceptionally powerful. Nobody else did. 6,000 I was quite glad to pay, not a big deal at all. I'm already shaving off a large amount of that money from the power that I'm already generating, and I haven't even really committed to the strategy completely yet. There's the mutiny. I believe that's on my metal mine. I just mutiny it right back, not a big deal. Thankfully I'm a scavenger, and I can get away with making little plays like that as necessary. Immediately start the energy shortage as the hacker array comes up. That's obviously going to be key. And at this point, I've already identified my target. And that's what you want to do when you're doing this kind of play. You're going for a massive spike in money. And simultaneously with that, you are trying to generate a large amount of debt. That makes it hard for other players to go after you. It makes it hard for other players to interrupt the attack you're trying to make. And it makes it hard for the guy getting attacked to defend himself. But you still want to target someone who has their own power up. That's actually also crucial, because you can punish them and you can shut down one of their claims and take it for yourself. That's what you want to be doing at some point. You're going to be using that mutiny. And so you have to pick your target very carefully, and I selected Ghoul. Ghoul's the obvious target. He's the other scavenger. He has a wind turbine up. All of this is absolutely fantastic for us. And we definitely make an effort to abuse it over the course of this game. I believe he was also the one, interestingly, that mutinied my metal mine. Aluminum's so valuable I throw down another metal mine, or I want to. I think I get it down eventually. Also, we can identify that this power price has already started causing problems, and our shortage hasn't even occurred yet, because, for example, Dead Lemon's stock price is getting very low. Ashburn's stock price is a little low. Amrax is a little low, and here comes the shortage. So in response to this, I believe I make a serious effort to go ahead and get a mutiny out. There it is, on the wind turbine. Now, Ghoul responds in a reasonable fashion, and he will throw down another wind turbine very, very soon. But thankfully, this is why being scavenger is crucial, because even though he's going to throw down another wind turbine before too long, we're going to be able to steal up his wind turbine and use it for ourselves. Another great thing about stealing Ghoul is we can see that he has oxygen and fuel production and glass production, some of the most valuable resource production available to us right now. We don't have to build that ourselves if we can take down another person. And so I very quickly go ahead and head into that takedown. I've sold off all of my carbon, by the way, every last one. Sold it all the way down to $1. Just because I need to push right now. I need to push right now. I need to go very, very soon. On the offensive, I need to make this play happen immediately. It's a very early game play. You can't just hang out. You can't just wait. Other players are already rocketing up to level 5. We can see Sphinx up there at level 4, Scientific HQ, this early in the game. It's a very strong play out of him. And I've obviously been delaying my own expansion, relying on getting a massive amount of money from each claim that I have, rather than getting a large amount of claims. You'll see here, Ghoul's debt is so extremely high that there's really not a lot he can do about this because he didn't defend himself in the first place. And we very, very easily finish him off. So that part of the plan succeeded, and now the rest of the game is just transitioning out of it. Thankfully, we're in a good spot. I felt a little bad for Ghoul. He wasn't playing poorly by any measure, but that's the reason he had to get taken out in part. So we're just going to work on transitioning out. We're just going to try and get, finally, some upgrades rolling in, get those extra claims, and start rounding out some of the production we've already seen. Unfortunately, our carbon mines were actually turned off, which I believe is a new feature with this patch, hit today as I'm recording this, where the game predicted that the carbon mine would be kind of costing us money, and so it turned it off automatically. But I still kind of wanted the carbon, because I was expecting carbon to be going up in price gradually, because I was going to be controlling a lot of the carbon income, and I wasn't going to be spending any of it. So even though it cost us money in the moment, later it would probably be worth it anyway. food production has also gotten quite out of hand, so you'll see that I just surplus that. That's a great thing about the hacker array, and part of why I honestly think the hacker array is a little overpowered is it's almost always useful, right? You can use it to try and build up your own resource and make your own resource production more valuable, or you can use it to harm an area that you are not committed to. And here we go after the food production. It doesn't go quite as well as we were hoping, but it does pay off a little bit. You'll also notice that we went ahead and we bought into Sphinx when his stock price was a little bit lower before he managed to acquire Dead Lemon. We should have bought into Dead Lemon a little bit more as he was going down to give us a nice, boost to our money. But at least we got those two stock buys fairly quickly when they were still cheap. It's going to be crucial later in the game. Geothermal plot, I don't really care about this that much. Generally speaking, I will mostly let this go, but not for so cheap. It does have value to it, just not a lot. So you kind of have to ride that fine line of getting other people to pay more if you can. Now, did I end up with the point? Apparently I did, which is fine. I didn't really want it, but I didn't want anybody else to have it either because power is extremely valuable. And so even though I didn't really want to use it, it was still it was okay. Because it was certainly still cheap enough based on power prices. And basically I'm spending that money acquiring the geothermal in order to protect my own power production. We can see Sphinx has gotten into a very scary place, very scary person this game. And he ends up being somebody that we're quite worried about for most of the game. But all told, things generally go pretty well. And we've been riding this aluminum short basically through the whole game, honestly. There wasn't a terrible... There was a lot of aluminum on the map, but people weren't gathering a lot of it for whatever reason, despite the shortages. There we go. I finally move into it again. I was trying to do that for a while, but it was difficult to get up all the claims. Kind of the downside of playing the way I was. You'll also notice I'm just generally attacking very powerful resources this whole time, kind of abusing that scavenger trait. Another great thing about being a scavenger in a big game is the black market is extremely cheap. It's easy to use it as often as you are able. And even though you kind of can take this attitude of, well, there's 8 players and I can only hurt, there's 7 other players, right? And I can only hurt one of them. There's truth to that. But generally speaking, usually only 1 or 2 of them are actual threats. So if you can hurt that player badly, and at the same time make yourself more powerful, things like knocking out their power when you're producing 2 extra power a second, or 3 extra power a second, things like that, can be a very, very helpful thing to do still. Transitioning into electronics here, that shouldn't be too big a surprise. The reason it might be is because silicon is expensive and getting more expensive. However, I'm predicting people will start hitting level 5 soon, or have already started hitting level 5 at that point, and there are no Offworlds up yet. So I'm expecting for electronics to increase in price enough to perhaps make it worthwhile that I've committed to them. That combined with the fact that I have the hacker array, I think makes electronics more valuable because they're difficult to move into and other people probably won't be able to interfere if I end up shorting them later. Energy Vault, not so much a big deal for me. I think other people certainly should have bid on this more than they did. But that's okay. That's okay at the end of the day. Generally a good call by Ashbuzz. Or however he would like me to say his name. So, it's a fairly straightforward game from here. I do go ahead and gather up some silicon, shouldn't be any surprise whatsoever. Extremely valuable resource. And carbon, like I expected, has gotten very expensive. Because nobody had carbon gathering. The scavengers grabbed up the good stuff right away. And everybody else was kind of having to come into the game rather than just being there. So that worked out very, very well for me. This was probably a counterproductive move. I put down a whole lot of silicon gathering and then I surplus silicon. It just kind of comes from trying to do too many things at once, right? I'm trying to gather silicon and I'm trying to make something with silicon. It's a bit counterproductive potentially. I'm going ahead and spending money to buy up stock. It's a pretty good investment. I'm trying to hit players that I think will be important in the later stages of the game with my stock purchases, which is why I'm going after Sphinx, even though he's extremely advanced and has an extremely high stock price, because I think he's dangerous is what it comes down to. And if I can secure his stock now and make him overreact, it protects me in a very nice way, just because he has now committed so much money, like close to what, $200,000 just to defending himself. That's $200,000 he can't invest in buying me. So that's okay, all things considered. Sell off quite a bit of Carmen, I believe, and then start trying to get my own Offworlds online. There's a little lag, and there has been all game, but thankfully it's not too terrible. This power surge should be no surprise whatsoever. Just trying to slow down the leader. Even though he's a scientist, still want to try and slow him down. Don't let him horn in on my electronics market. And once again, we only moved into electronics because of the combined ideas that people were going to be getting Offworlds up. There were still a lot of people left in the game, and we had that hacker array. So let's see what happens with the end of this. I don't remember the entire game, if I'm honest with you guys. I try to do my best, but games are complicated. I don't know if you guys have noticed, this game is hard. So I have a hard time keeping track of everything in my head while I'm trying to do commentary on it. So it's exciting for me too. Pirates are obviously worth 6,000 at this point. There's a scientist in the game. I could have intercepted his electronics, for example, if those were still online. I think I go after some steel, maybe, with those. I might also have hit the water, because water's been pretty crazy this game. Yeah, okay, I just go after some water. Water is obviously being shorted. We've had a couple of water shorts at this point. So, and a lot of people have things like food production down. They have things like fuel and oxygen production down. So because of those earlier water shorts, I felt fairly confident taking that water because people's stockpiles had already been depleted so significantly. And then we simply commit all of it into the glass short that we hit with the hacker array. Maybe not the best idea. I think that helped pull another player back into the game because he had glass production as well. But thankfully, we knew about it ahead of time, and as you can tell, we had 1,500 glass, worth an insane amount of money. And let's see, yeah, 654,000, and goodbye to Finks. Fantastically, that also gives us control of all of his electronics production, which is quite nice. Amrak is trying to buy us out. But what ends up happening here is I'm fairly confident that I can just pretty easily race him. My stock price is above his. Combined with that, even after that buyout, I have a lot more stuff than he does right now, right? I have 2 Offworlds. I have 2 engineering bays for some reason, which is just whatever. I don't like the engineering bays. I don't think I ever managed to get rid of them because there are so many things to do. I hate engineering bays, guys. And I also have control over just so many different things that I assume my investments, despite having depleted all of my resources, can go ahead and raise him. So that's just kind of how we're going to clean up the rest of this game. We're just relying on the fact that we bought so many people that we're not going to even defend ourselves very much. He can keep trying, but he has no Offworld up. He's very, very vulnerable to the black market that we have such great access to. Hitting his oxygen production there shouldn't be any surprise whatsoever. And we just don't think he can actually take us down. I am a bit worried in committing so many of my resources to electronics because obviously, okay, I have money. But the question is, do I invest that money into making more money later, or do I invest it into not having to pay as much money by purchasing his stock now? It's kind of a hard call, but my assumption is that the electronics price is so high, it will eventually pay off. I actually feel so much better because Wonko bought up a share of our stock. That was fantastic for me. That was excellent. That's what really made me feel like we actually had the game in the bag and we could just go after Amrak, because suddenly Amrak has to pay double for that last share. Double for that last share. Wonko's nowhere near buying us out. We don't need to worry about him at all. So him buying a share pretty much secures the game for us completely, which is fantastic. If anything, who Wonko should have invested in was the other guy so he could get a payoff when I finished the purchase. I don't think I ever got the electronics short up, hence why I hate electronics, guys. Shouldn't be any surprise whatsoever. Well, I hope this video was at least somewhat informative and enjoyable. And we see that I also had like a pleasure dome down. I used virtual reality. I got to a patent lab, all those things I wasn't really talking about because they weren't core to the strategy. They were just kind of extra things I could get away with doing. You see, I did pull up the stat screen for just a moment if anybody's particularly curious, but we can see that I made almost $300,000 off of power. It was very intentional. This game very much used for an 8-player game or a game with large numbers of players. I didn't even use my Offworlds effectively. One of them was turned off and I tried to turn it on and it didn't trigger for some reason. And then I just stopped sending resources. I was so committed to actually getting the purchasing done. I didn't want to invest more money in that other way, into that Offworld. So it was probably a bad idea to put the Offworld I had up. But we had so much, it worked out in the end. That's just about going to do it for this video. One thing I will note is I went ahead and looked through the stats. I had 16 black market purchases that game. 16. The next highest wasn't even close. I mean, like, other people sat there with like 4 or 0. You know, usually it was in that range. So that was pretty interesting. Definitely an interesting thing to note that game. Black market, heavily underutilized. Obviously, I was a scavenger, but I shouldn't have that many more than everybody else, realistically. It was a good game. It was an interesting game. I was using a strategy I'm not really accustomed to. I still don't like it for small numbers of players, I will clarify. I think that is most definitely a game. A strategy for a game with large numbers of players. But it worked out. It worked out all right. I'll have to experiment with it more later, possibly with other colonies. We'll have to see if I can make it work there. And we may see a little bit more of it in the coming days. But until then, thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.